Hello class, today we're going to talk about Jackson Pollock and my art practice in response to him, as well as quotes and thoughts in response to these quotes. So first we're going to start off with this quote right here. I continue to get further away from the usual painter's tools, such as an easel, palette, brushes, etc. So what's really important to keep in mind here is the individualness of all the abstraction of that time. Also, when we think about the methodology of his practice, so his action painting was a form of methodology, I believe, and this was part of him explaining the process that he would be going through, in that he's thinking about using materials much differently than the tradition of painters of that time, and really Jackson Pollock was just engaging with the play that is necessary to sometimes grow yourself as an artist and make sure that we experiment and try new things. So it's a really important thing to think about. I use this quote to explain how thinking in different ways to use your materials, which goes back to the essentially play, and that's really important. We'll go on to the next quote. I have no fear of making changes, destroying the image, etc., because the painting has a life of its own. So what Pollock is trying to talk about here is what I like to call having communication with the painting. So sometimes when you're doing the painting as an artist, the painting will actually speak back to you. Now, you might think, Julian, that sounds crazy, but it is the truth. There is like some sort of divinity that us artists have with our paintings, so we just have to have this communication with it. It's kind of like a spiritual kind of calling sort of thing, and as artists we can't just deny that and pretend it doesn't exist, because it exists for us. We have no choice about this. If we don't have this, then you got to think about, is art really having a calling right now? Yep, you have to make like a call, because the painting is forcing you to keep going, and is almost it's asking you to guide itself into existence through you in a way. That's what I believe is what is going on when he talks about this. And there's what other people would forget about Jackson Pollock as well is that near the end of his career, he stopped painting his action paintings for a couple of years as well. And he was trying to communicate his emotions at the time, in that he just painted black canvases after black canvas. And he was really just talking about his depression, because he's clearly a depressed person, being an alcoholic that would get into pubs and fights and things like that. He was a real cowboy, so to speak. But getting back to the quote, is sometimes you need to make a bold move even if others disagree. So this is what Pollock was doing at the time, because no one was painting like the way he was at the time. He was completely making a different choice to art than a lot of other people do. And I gotta say, his risk completely paid off. And that's also part of being an artist, is that sometimes you just gotta take risks, and that risk will pay off. Now, the modern artist is working with space and time and expressing his feelings rather than illustrating. It's very important to keep in mind due to the strange times that we are in currently as well. Which really hones my next point here, is that abstraction is all about feelings. So going back to what I was saying earlier about Pollock doing those huge black paintings, essentially, that was a huge response to his depression that really showed. His Pollock paintings have a very complex emotion to them, I find. Anyway, we'll go on to the next quote. On the floor, I move at ease. I feel nearer and more part of the painting, since the way I could walk around it, work the form, the four sides, and literally being in the painting. So one of the other things that a lot of people don't know about Pollock is he actually had his cigarettes getting into the painting as well. Like, he's literally got probably some of his DNA in every single painting, which is really interesting. Moving around the painting is always really important as well. And what you notice through the video that I tend to sometimes walk around the painting and flick the paint on from different angles. You can see now going into the last bit of my painting, which I'll go to in a bit. Yeah, and being able to control the mark making effectively is really important here. But now I'm going to go on to talking about my own practice. So I use action painting, clearly. One of the things I do is I use tape to remove some of the Pollock style to do a drawing with it. But one of the important things is always keeping control from four sides. It's all about the color, mark making, and using odd materials and tools. Like, using tape as a drawing tool is actually quite rare. Now, you can see me making a mistake. I was trying to film this at the same time without too much help, and I kind of did a little bit of a woozy here, but you know what Pollock says? He says, "We make no mistakes." So this is the painting talking to us that he needs something to change, so I put some blue paint on it. So the lines that I made here is kind of being a landscape and is the intention, but I don't feel like that's how it worked out, but you know, that's just part of it. So yeah, that's all I'm really going to talk to you about today. So I hope that gives you a better understanding of Pollock, as well as an understanding into my work, because he's probably one of the biggest influences in these types of works, but that's kind of obvious. Anyway, peace out. Thank you for listening, and glad you made it to the end. Bye.